Hey YouTube, I'm back with another deck profile. Today I'm going to be doing my updated Claret Sword Dragon deck. So Claret Sword is probably the least played Shadow Paladin deck. Especially if you go to any kind of events, you almost never see this guy. At least in my area, I never see him. So I remember when I picked this guy up, he was really easy to obtain. Similar to the Dragonic Vanquisher for Narukami. Because everybody's still crazy about Revengers back then when he first came out. So I eventually the Legend deck came out, or I forgot which one came out first. I think the Legend came out and then he came out, or they came out on the same time. I'm pretty sure the Legend deck came out first because I think it came out with Ibuki's trial deck. So I basically, like, before what I had was like combine Blaster Dark Diablo with Claret Sword. But since Claret Sword got some support, pretty decent support, I'd say. It's not like way good. Like, it didn't completely revive the deck the way, say, the Revenger stuff for Raging Form did, but he got enough cards now that I feel like, and especially since Diablo, the Diablo stuff became a thing, and even Blasters got even more support, the Shadow Blasters. I kind of like separated both of them into their own decks, so they could basically, I could see that their different play styles and find out different strategies. So Claret Sword's kind of like that underdog Shadow Paladin deck that no one really talks about, but technically he is the original GB2 based off of the show and stuff like that. So Kanzaki used him. He had the best starting stride unit, or first stride, of any clan. It's still one of the best strides, or first strides at least. So Claret Sword, this is going to be his deck build. So for Supremacy Dragon, Claret Sword Dragon, he has a similar effect to Paradir from Revengers, where his GB2 skill is basically he can retire 2 rear guards to give himself 10k in a critical. So very basic skill. It's a once per turn, so you cannot spam it, you can't stack it. And then during your turn, and his on-stride skill is you can counterblast 1 when you stride. You can search your deck for a grade 1 or less, call it, and then that unit gets 2k. So pretty decent card, very Shadow Paladin-ish in terms of like the what he does. The next grade 3s, I did change it a little bit just to test some stuff out, just to test a new guy out. So 3 Overbearing Knight, Gilvest. This guy's not new. He actually came out in set 4, but he is probably the best, I would say, unless you're running Blasters or Diablo or some other stuff. He's probably the best backup stride, because he also has an on-stride skill. So when you stride on top of him, you can give the Vanguard 5k. So it's very much like Messiah in that sense, where it gives that extra 5k. And then it's a decent backup. But because the deck runs a lot of Claret Sword specific support, riding this is not ideal. And then they did get a new card, which I may bump up more because it has a rearguard effect. So I might actually take this guy out down to 2, or take him out completely for this guy. Let me know what you guys think. So this is Death Spray Dragon. He's a new card. He has Vanguard or Rearguard, GB1 skill. At the end of the battle that he attacked the Vanguard, you can counterblast 1 to retire 1 of your rearguards. And if you do, you can choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it. So he's actually quite good. But the thing is, I found in playtesting him, that's why I'm only running 1 copy right now. The one time I actually tried testing him on the field, I don't like having to retire my stuff after I've used like a Claret Sword GB2 skill or something where I've already retired stuff, like Aura Geyser, for example. I don't like retiring another one of my rear guards after retiring 2. So, but I feel like he has some potential. I just haven't found it yet. So let me know in the comments what you think of Death Spray Dragon. If you think he's a better alternate, should I just go with 4 of him with Claret Sword? Because even if I ride him as the Vanguard, he has a pretty decent ability as a Vanguard. And I like that he doesn't have to hit to retire an opponent's card. So even though I have to give up one of my cards, I feel like it's still pretty good because it lets me choose their card to retire. So he's good because he gives this deck retire power, which this deck lacks compared to Diablo and Revengers. So that's why I put him in here. I may bump him up, not sure yet. For grade 2s, I am running 4 Dark Pride Dragon. He is meant for Claret Sword. He's from set 4. When he's put into the drop zone for the cost of your unit's ability, if you have a Claret Sword Dragon Vanguard, search your deck for a Dark Quartz Dragon, which is actually the grade 1 equivalent of this guy. And you can call it to R. It doesn't have to be behind, it can be any R. And then shuffle the deck. And if you call a unit, you get to countercharge 1. So he's the unflip engine for Claret Sword Dragon, which is why we run this guy in here. Have 4 copies. So pretty decent. The deck does counterblast quite a bit since his on-strike skill will counterblast 1. This guy can counterblast if you're using him on the field. And then your Vanguards counterblast a lot. So next, a new card, 3 Greymew. This is the Glimmerbreath Dragon clone for Shadow Paladin, and I'm very surprised to find that this is just a common. So I guess they're realizing that these type of cards are not that popular, I guess, since they are quite hefty costs. So on call GB1, you can Counterblast 1 and Soul Blast 1, and I don't like the Soul Blast, because the Soul in this deck is very limited. Aura Geyser's going to Soul Blast 1, and another card, a grade 1, will be Soul Blasting as well. This guy's Soul Blast, so you can't really do a whole lot of Soul Blasting. But basically, if you've got Claret Sword, you can use this effect to call a grade 1, and this unit gets 2k. So very similar to Glimmerbreath and those type of skills. Next I'm running 2 of the Knight of Brawn, Grozny. He's again from set 4, so he's not a new card, but when you call a grade less than this unit, so basically you call a grade 1 or 0, he gets 3k. So it can't stack if you call multiple cards to the field from the deck in that turn, so he becomes 12, then 15, so he can hit some pretty nice numbers. 2 copies because he's not that consistent, since he is dependent on you calling stuff. So basically, like on stride skill will make him 12, but you have to call some other stuff. The nice thing about it though is it doesn't have to be from the deck. It's just when your other unit with a grade less than this unit is placed on R, so you can call from hand and he'll still gain power. So 2 of him, and then I am running 2 Scornful Knight Gaiva. So Skullwitch Nevin is probably a better target, or a better choice here, since she's not GB restricted. But the only thing I like about Gaiva, as opposed to Nevin, is you don't have a horrible time. Like if you open up and you have to ride Nevin as grade 2, and your opponent has a full field early because they're trying to rush you down. With this, you can still potentially guard if you have like a 10k in hand. Even if they swing to it with a 9 to this, you can block it with 5. So it's a better defensive card than Nevin, but it's not as good as Nevin in terms of the overall usefulness. The utility is not as good. But I don't know. I'm just playing it in here just to try it out. So let me know if you have any ideas for better grade 2s. People are probably going to say, why aren't you using Maka in here? Maka is actually in my Diablo deck, all 4 copies, so unless I split them, I don't know. I feel like Maka isn't really needed in here, mainly because Claret Sword's on-stride skill will automatically just call something, and then I have other ways to call other stuff, which we'll get into shortly, or I guess call it grade 1s. For grade 1s, 4 Karma Collector, because this is the perfect guard meant for Claret Sword, since the deck is always counterblasting pretty much every turn after it gets GB1. And then 2 Sword Breakers. They were originally in my Revenger deck, so this is the deck that I put them in, and there's a reason why I chose to put them in here. Specifically this deck and not Diablo or keeping them in the Revenger deck. So, and we'll get into that. But yeah, everybody knows what they do if they played against Revenger. Basically, when they're called on R from the deck, you can Soul Blast 1 to draw a card. So again, they use up Soul. So Soul's very sparse in this deck. So next we've got 2 Dark Quartz Dragon. Dark Quartz is the partner to this guy, Dark Pride, I think. Yeah, Dark Pride Dragon. So basically, when he's placed on R, if you have a Claret Sword Dragon, you can choose one of your vanguards, and that unit and this unit gets 3k. So he becomes a 10k. So he's basically your 10k boost. The turn he's called. So that's why you only really need like 2 copies of it, because you can tutor a lot of grade 1s. That's what I like about Shadow Paladin. And it just powers up the Vanguard a little bit. So next, 2 Knight of Saga City Gonvar. So same as this guy. The only problem is, the only thing about him that I don't like, which I am considering not running him at all. I might just bump Dark Quartz up completely, but I just want to showcase this card. So he does the same thing as this guy. The only problem with him is that it's only when you call a grade less than him. So only grade 0s being superior called will power this guy up. So, but he could potentially power up himself more than once, but it usually doesn't happen. So I might actually take him out. This is a card that hasn't really shown its usefulness to me in playtesting this deck, but I just have it in here. Next, 2 Cherishing Knight Brawin, so Stride Enabler, just so that you can stride. It's also meant for Claret Sword. It's like this Claret Sword is the card that this card searches for if you have to use a search effect, which I kind of recommend, because Claret Sword is like, the deck is so heavily Claret Sword focused. And then next, a new card, Abyss Summoner. So when, basically, again, it's Claret Sword restricted card, GB1, once per turn. When your other rear guard is put in the drop zone, cost of your unit's ability, and you have Claret Sword as a Vanguard, you can counter unflip 1, Soul Charger 1, and this unit gets 3k. So he becomes 10k, he unflips, and the only requirement is that something else is getting retired, and you have to have Claret Sword as a Vanguard. So he's pretty good. Obviously, I feel like Abyss Summoner and Dark Horse Dragon are a lot more useful than Knight of Saga City. So I may just take one of each out and bump both of those guys up to 3 each. For the zeros, I am running stands in here, and the reason why I put Swordbreaker in here is because originally when I was playtesting the deck with the stands, I am running 4, so 2 of the Cursed Eye Raven and 2 of the new Mage of Rogue Eye Arcer. So I might actually just take out the Raven completely, but I do like that the Raven does thin the deck by an extra card. Like, it takes 2 out for your retire skills, and then it puts itself back. So you have a higher probability of pulling a trigger on the drive check compared to this guy. But this guy is still pretty good because he's just overall easier to use than Cursed Eye Raven, since Cursed Eye is a main phase skill, and this guy can be used whenever, basically, when he's getting retired. So I like that he basically, Rogue Eye replaced David, so you don't have to run David anymore, so you can run the 14 grade 1s and no extra David. So that's why I like this card a lot, actually. So, but because of the stands, the deck had low draw, in my opinion, so that's why I put Swordbreakers in. And Swordbreakers are easy to call in this deck. Easier than Judge Bow and Revenger calling them, because Judge Bow oftentimes could die very easily, and Claret Sword's on strike can easily call either of these. So I like them in here a lot. So 4 stand, and then 4 of Claret Sword's special critical, really good, and then 4 of the new critical from set 6, then 4 of the new heal from set 6. So Shadow Paladin actually got a lot of new triggers. They also got a critical, basically one of each. They got a new draw, which I'm not using. It's vanilla with no effect. It's got the new stand mage, this critical, and the illegal alchemist. The starter I am using is the new one. It doesn't use counterblast. It can actually counter charge, and it calls a grade 1, reveals to the opponent, and you put that card on the top of the deck. Then if you put that card on the top of the deck, you can unflip 1. So it doesn't call a grade 1, but it sets it up. And what I've often found myself doing, and the opponent gets to see that card, it just annoys them, is like basically top decking Karma Collector and then getting it with Aura Geyser. So combos really well with Aura Geyser, actually. Just tutoring perfect guards to your hand is really nice. Okay, for the Stride deck, since this is the one that doesn't have like Diablo specific stuff, it can't really benefit that much the way that Blaster Diablos and stuff do. But still running the Aura Geyser as the first Stride, really good with the starter, really good to search perfect guards. Just very good first Stride. It enables Claret Sword's GB2. Basically turns the whole deck on so you can do everything, get all of its skills. One Grim Recruiter, because it's a free on-call grade 1 if they let it hit. One Dark Knight Efnician, mainly because it has the ability to retire one of the opponent's rear guards, and you have to retire one of yours. So there's ways to use this optimally with like the Raven and just being able to recall or call other stuff. And then for Diablo, because you can use it and it works really well. So there's that. So Claret Sword, I don't have the Doomed. Aura Geyser Doomed. People were like, you should run Aura Geyser Doomed. Yeah, if I had him, I'd probably take out this guy. But I don't have him, and I don't see myself getting him anytime in the near future. I think that card's a little bit overrated, and it's not really... I feel like it's just not really that necessary. But I don't know, if I can find it for either really good deal, then I may add it at some point, but I don't really care about that card. So anyway, guys, that's my updated Claret Sword deck. Let me know in the comments what you think of running the stands in here. I try, since the deck doesn't have as much draw power as typical Shadow Paladin decks, I put the 2 Sword Breakers in. They're easy to call to the field, and they basically help you. I mean, since it's very consistent to call them, you don't really need the draws. And I feel like the stands replace having to run David in any kind of weird grade lineup. So, anyway, that was Claret Sword. Hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.